everybody, and welcome to another Linfield Coaches CatChat for the Linfield Men's Soccer Program. Joe Stewart here with head coach Andy Duvall. Andy, how you doing today?
I'm great, Joe. How are you?
Pretty good, man. I'm doing all right. You know, good. We're having a good week here at Linfield University right now, and hopefully it's going to roll into a good weekend as well. But let's talk about last weekend. A couple of tough losses. One here at home in double overtime, always tough to swallow, and then one on the road the following day, which has got to just be kind of another dagger, I imagine. After wanting to bounce back after the OT loss, I'm sure that was tough as well. What is the conversation like with your team in a stretch like this, still looking for their first conference win and after a tough weekend?
Yeah, I don't think the conversation changes. I mean, we went into the weekend continuing to try and move forward, which, in our opinion as a team, we went backwards. We didn't actually make strides in a positive direction, and even if we had won those games but not played well, then I think we'd still be having the conversation here is that, oh, well, at least we got a couple of goals and won the game, but we didn't play very well. It's, that doesn't do much for us in the long term. So in the short term, obviously it hurts. Like you say, it can feel like a dagger in the heart when you lose those games, when you're going into the weekend where all three teams are winless in conference and you come out as the only team still winless, right? But in the grander scheme of things, we can't make excuses and say, oh, well, it's because we're looking at things that don't involve winning games. No, we're trying to win games. I think it'd be silly to say that we aren't. And we didn't come up with the quality of play that we needed to in order to get the wins this weekend. Credit to Fox and Pacific. Paul at George Fox and Brandon at Pacific. Their guys were able to put the ball away more than our guys were. And part of it was some of the things we didn't get right, and part of it was some of the things that Pacific and George Fox got right. So we look at it honestly and say we are not at a level right now, or at least we weren't this weekend, in order to win those matches. And so the conversation is, well, let's not forget what happened, but also start to look forward to what's coming up this weekend.
What are some of the things from this last weekend that you're hoping is going to look better here moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, simple things. It's not complicated. Just completing simple passes, taking controlled, simple touches, playing sound defense, and outworking the opponent in multiple ways. And I think, this game is extremely simple. It's not a complicated game. And when you overcomplicate the really simple things, you end up on the wrong end of losing the game, right? And so I think our guys knew this weekend that they were coming into a weekend where they made a lot of good progress, and I think perhaps we let it get to our heads a little bit. And I'll take responsibility for that. Maybe I didn't prepare the guys in the right way mentally for entering the weekend. We never once talked about, well, this is a weekend where we should really come up with wins. It wasn't that kind of an approach to the weekend. It was more about let's continue to get better. And like I said, we didn't get better. We took a step backwards. And so the guys, they feel it. They understand exactly what happened this last weekend, regardless of the result. They were more disappointed in their performance than they were the losses. And so, we have to look at it and, again, pay attention to the things that we didn't get right, the details that are the simple parts of the game, passing, receiving, defending well, and now look at this weekend and say, can we do better in those areas?
Sure, and you guys did have a couple of solid chances against George Fox in that match offensively. Your only goal ended up being Max Testa's beauty from beyond the penalty box, but I know those aren't the shots that you're always looking for in your system. So what did you think of the offensive creation from this last weekend?
Yeah, I think the phrase fortune favors the brave is really relevant in this situation, and we weren't brave. I mean, our guys were very timid in the attacking third. We refer to it as Zone 3. And in Zone 3, we simply didn't take enough chances. Strikers are players that like to be fed the ball. They want the ball in goal-scoring positions, and if they don't get it, then they don't give the chance to try and put the ball in the back of the net for their team. And so strikers have a specific job, and if you don't give them the ball in order to try and do that job, then they don't get the job done. And we just weren't brave enough. And so I think that was a big miss from us this weekend, was that we have kind of gotten into a phase, unfortunately, where we're putting a lot of tension on how we get the ball from one end of the park to the other, but then not really how to be as adventurous enough and brave enough when we get to the attacking third. And so that really hurt us this weekend. And even though Max had a good goal, and like you say, it's not exactly the kind of shot that we're constantly looking for, it was brave of Max to do that, which is why he was rewarded for it, right? And so we just have to be more brave and more adventurous in that part of the park. And in order to do that, guys have to take on a different attitude when we get up there.
So we're already a month into the season here, facing October, just around the corner. Now that you've had this much time with the team and you have, a strong sample size, conference matches as well, what are some of the positive strides that you've seen just from August to now? And then what are some things that you still, obviously we've talked about it a bit already today, but the things that you hope that is going to come together more in the back month of the season?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's positive is that the guys are starting to look at the game in a different way than they did before. And what I mean by that is they used to go into games trying to avoid losing. And that's a really tough way to play any sport. And in the sport of soccer, the way that manifests itself is you have a team that basically sets itself up only to defend for the majority of the game and look to create very few chances, but hope that you can get something out of the one or two chances that you create. Our guys are learning how to change that mentality and say, no, we're going into games to try and win. We're not going to go into games to try and avoid losing. And we're going to take the mistakes that come with that. And so we have learned the hard way. We've had a lot of mistakes by trying to address that mentality. However, the guys have done a good job at trying to change the way they approach the game, which it's a long road to getting to finding success with that. So that, I think, is a positive thing. The thing that I hope that we continue to get better at this weekend, again, is just the simple parts of the game. The guys trained really well last week, so it was a little bit strange that they went out and had the first half that they had against George Fox. It was really a poor first half, quite possibly the worst half of football that we've put together so far this year. And it came down to just really, really simple mistakes. Again, just missing passes, 10, 15-yard passes, missing your target, taking touches that were into pressure as opposed to away from pressure. A lot of the things that they spent so much time on trying to get better at so far this year. And so, unfortunately for the guys, it just didn't come off for them against Fox and Pacific. And say what you want about it, maybe it was them thinking it was going to be different competition than what they faced the week before. We played better soccer against Whitworth and Whitman, even though the scoreline was more divided. We played better against those two programs. And so, mentality-wise, perhaps the guys weren't in the right mindset going into that Fox and Pacific game. So this weekend, I'd like to see that they can get back to actually completing the simple things well when they get on the field.
It's 2 at home this weekend for the Wildcats as the Tacoma schools come to town. There'll be PLU on Saturday at 2:30, and then Puget Sound on Sunday at 2:30. We'll have live coverage on the Linfield Sports Network with both of those. Coach, thanks for the time as always.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it.